Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I thank God for this opportunity once again to be in the Parliament of the Bahamas to address issues that affect Bahamians in general and residents of Marco City in particular. And I thank them once again for giving me this rare opportunity to give voice to their dreams and aspirations and the dreams and aspirations of their children yet unborn. Today, I join members in this House lending my voice to the Data Protection Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, much of what is contained in this bill and the issues surrounding the creation of this bill has emerged out of discussions across the globe, whether it's by the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union or the United Nations organization that deals with trade and development, or as my brother from East Grand Bahama, Kwesi Thompson, visited Estonia, and therefore a lot of what they have done over the years has factored into this discussion. And of course, various members of the OECD, their regulations have also been reviewed. And of course, right here in our own jurisdiction, so many Bahamians for years have been discussing these issues, whether it's a Donovan Moxey or C. Allen Johnson or our colleague who is from Bain and Grantstown. These have been important matters discussed that have brought us to this day to solve some of the challenges we have. And so I rise today to address an issue that lies at the very heart of what is the 21st century economy, and that issue is the issue of data. Madam Speaker, it's not merely about the numbers we see on the screens or the files we upload to the cloud, but the lifeblood of modern world. It is about the information that defines who we are, our decisions, the various institutions that we're a part of, and where we are headed as a country. Madam Speaker, around the world, nations are realizing that data is really the new asset, the new oil, the new currency, and indeed the new frontier where we are negotiating issues of national sovereignty. And if the Bahamas is to assume its rightful place in a world that's changing rapidly, we have to put forth, Madam Speaker, a strategic plan, a vision, as you will, and, of course, summons the courage to modernize our data privacy protection and sovereignty laws. And, of course, we must, Madam Speaker, as a government, inspire trust, because the implementation of the law requires that the people trust not just the legislation, the will of a government to live by some simple rules. That one, they are willing to protect its citizens' privacy and those who cast their lot with us, who invest in the Bahamas, but at the same time that we are able to trust that government to be proper gatekeepers, so that the law is more than just what is on the paper, but it is in the applications of the rules. It is about demonstrating the spirit of the law to make sure that it can have full effect on the society. And so, Madam Speaker, artificial intelligence and digital platforms and global data networks are clearly reshaping every aspect of human activity, from finance and healthcare to governance, education, and a wide range of industries. In fact, it's even reshaping how we get along with our boo and our snooks, our personal relationships. In this age, Madam Speaker, power no longer rests solely on physical resources or where we are strategically located in the world. It rests, Madam Speaker, on technology and how we use it and how we permit it to impact us. But what is important in that discussion, Madam Speaker, is who controls the data, who protects it, and who can transform it into innovation, and who can monetize it. That is, Madam Speaker, determine its value. Countries that fail to secure their citizens' data or to regulate how foreign platforms use it risk becoming digital colonies in an era where information is power. Information, Madam Speaker, is wealth. The Bahamas cannot afford to remain a passive participant in this transformation. The beauty, Madam Speaker, of being a developing country is that while you may be small in stature, by following best practices around the world, you can leapfrog other countries and, Madam Speaker, operate on the global stage as an equal partner, punching well above your weight. We must become an active architect in our own digital destiny, Madam Speaker. And so today, as we look at our present situation, the question is, where are we and what do we do? This bill now before us clearly is an important update to the original 2003 Act. Madam Speaker, it establishes a modern regulatory framework that introduces new oversight mechanisms. And while important, Madam Speaker, it does not go far enough, as my colleagues have already underscored. It protects the privacy of Bahamians within our borders, yes, but it does not establish the full sovereign control required in a world where our citizens' data may be stored, processed, or monetized thousands of miles away. It does not yet position the Bahamas as a jurisdiction of choice for global citizens who value privacy, digital security, and ethical AI. To build that reality, Madam Speaker, we must think beyond the issue of compliance toward constitutional protection, data sovereignty, and strategic national policy for the digital economy. This debate, Madam Speaker, is about more than technology. It is really about trust. Every Bahamian deserves two things: strong privacy and an economy that gives them a fair chance, Madam Speaker. Any data protection law we pass must do both: protect our people and promote growth, while upholding the public's right to know how their government operates, Madam Speaker. And I believe an objective evaluation of the two choices ahead of this election, Madam Speaker, will show, Madam Speaker, that this administration is not given to full transparency in how it conducts the people affairs. And its notion, Madam Speaker, of good governance does not include being completely open with its people about the reasons why they make the choices that affect all of us. Right now, Madam Speaker, the Bahamian economy is faltering, contrary to the Prime Minister's consistent characterization of this economy clicking on all cylinders, Madam Speaker. We know that we have returned to a slow to no growth trajectory, Madam Speaker. We are growing at less than 2% per annum, based not only on international evaluations and projections, but on the government's own numbers, Madam Speaker. We don't glory in it, but we wish to point it out, since the Prime Minister tends to be addicted to giving the impression that they are doing so many things that have just transformed the Bahamian economy, Madam Speaker. It is not true, Madam Speaker. No, we are not falling off the edge of the cliff, nor are we climbing the lofty mountain that we have the capacity to climb as a country. Growth is slowing. Unemployment is rising. Youth joblessness, Madam Speaker, near 20%. Families are struggling with the cost of living. And, Madam Speaker, the cost of living is outpacing the wages. This is not the time, Madam Speaker, to add new administrative and legal burdens to small and medium-sized businesses that are fighting to stay afloat in this country. Madam Speaker, this bill in some ways add weight without the required balance. This bill requires mandatory registration, breach reporting, and local representation for foreign entities. These measures, Madam Speaker, may sound harmless on paper, but for small firms, they mean new costs, new forms, new risk. For foreign investors, they raise questions about whether the Bahamas is truly open for business. Are we ready to take flight? Madam Speaker, we should be about the business of attracting investment, both local and foreign, not scaring away with red tape and failure to improve on the ease of doing business. Yes. A strong data regime should balance rights and responsibilities, but not punish growth. This administration often treats business persons, entrepreneurs, people who are on the cutting edge of change as if they are criminals. So they're suspected first before they're given credit for innovation, Madam Speaker. Secondly, this bill criminalizes what others in other jurisdictions treat as administrative. Other jurisdictions like the UK, the EU, gets results through administrative fines, not jail terms. In Europe, Madam Speaker, a company can face penalties of up to 4% of global turnover, or 20 million euros, whichever is greater. But very few offenses carry criminal liability. This bill, however, threatens up to 5 years in prison for data offenses, with administrative fines capped at just $10,000. That, Madam Speaker, in our humble estimation, is backwards. Corporations respond to financial penalties, not the threat of jail, Madam Speaker. Criminalization will slow down compliance, cooperation, and burden an already overstretched court system that we're struggling to fix. Are we really saying that we want to send Bahamian business people to prison for operational non-compliance, while major tax cheats and contract offenders go unpunished? Madam Speaker, I look with great curiosity. I don't mean to digress, but the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture is talking about auditing the Jankuru groups, and what they have seen preliminarily is some troubling things. The very ministry, Madam Speaker, that we will show by laying some reports from the Public Accounts Committee, they are not good with audit. They don't respond well to audits. In fact, audits have found them wanting, Madam Speaker. So as they seek to audit JCNP, they should first go back and audit 2 of the games that they have presided over, and we haven't yet gotten the results from the World Relay. So I'm just saying, Madam Speaker, you know, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, and we cannot afford one law for the Progressive Liberal Party and a different law for ordinary citizens. Madam Speaker, this bill, of course, grants broad exemptions without tight safeguards. The bill also gives ministers sweeping powers, which is very dangerous in general, but particularly under the PLP. They are given sweeping powers to exempt categories of processing without applying the necessary and proportionate, Madam Speaker, in this democratic society. There's a test, Madam Speaker, and I want to read that back into the hearing of the public. This bill also gives ministers sweeping powers to exempt categories of processing without applying the necessary and proportionate in democratic society tests, as used, Madam Speaker, in the UK and the EU. Without that test, this law risks becoming a political shield instead of a privacy safeguard. The same government that claims to defend your data could use these exemptions to hide its own. Madam Speaker, this is a point that you just made a moment ago, Madam Speaker. That's probably why this administration does not want to further empower, Madam Speaker, the Auditor General's office, because truthfully, the Auditor General office had all of the resources required to hire the professionals needed. We would learn quite a few things about how governments function, Madam Speaker, and we're talking about all governments. We don't play favorites in this regard. Colleagues, we have learned hard lessons. FTX should have sharpened our focus on digital assets governance and the protection of personal data in high-risk environments. Madam Speaker, during that fiasco and in the aftermath of it, people lost trust. And we must rebuild it with rules that prevent misuse, and that require security by design and hold firms to account. And we must speak to trust today, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
The member for Marco City, by his assertion, seems to be disagreeing with the liquidator appointed in the U.S., who found that the Bahamian system was robust, held FDX to account, and has resulted in nearly full recovery for those harmed by FDX. All of the rest of it I'll address in my closing, but that is just in stark opposition to what the person representing those harmed by FDX appointed in the U.S. said about our system, which I might add, the construction of which started an FNM administration. And that's not to say it was bad, that's to say that this is something that as we develop our financial services regime, it has been something that both administrations work diligently at.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, I wish to continue only to say that we ought to be careful as policymakers not to cozy up with folks and give the impression that we may be pursuing personal benefits versus benefits for the sector that we're in, and I'll leave that there. Madam Speaker, this is the same government that told the public workers in this very House that raises would arrive, then missed the dates, then offered shifting explanation. Workers heard promises, workers planned their lives, but the promises were not realized. Only through a show of force were they able, in the first instance, to get a prime minister to come out and greet them, and then in the second instance to flee from them because he did not have satisfactory answers for actions that he had taken, Madam Speaker. I applaud the leaders of these trade unions, Madam Speaker, for their courage and their tenacity and their consistency, Madam Speaker, in both, Madam Speaker, challenging an FNM and a PLP government, Madam Speaker. So for those that wish to politicize this on one side of the divide, let us be clear. They have challenged both administrations. This administration that signed an MOU cannot take the medicine, the same medicine that have us on this side, Madam Speaker. And so we ask them to just calm down, take the medicine, and then switch sides come next general election, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, if they cannot keep their word to the people who serve the country, what makes you think they will keep their word to most of the Bahamians who are concerned about the state of their personal data in the hands of a government that weaponizes institutions of the state, Madam Speaker? They want trust, but they haven't earned it. This government governs in secrecy and deflects when questioned. In fact, they bully people who question, threaten public workers, Madam Speaker, in a speech that talked about fairness. And again, Madam Speaker, the workers answered the threats by saying, "This me now." They used the words of, the powerful words of a Marion, "This me now," and they came downtown to show the government what time it is. Consider their record, Madam Speaker. They attempt to criminalize so-called false news with a direct attack on free expression and accountability.
Madam Speaker, the member is wrong on many accounts, and he indicated that the public servants or workers were threatened on television, and that is totally incorrect. And unless the member, a threat, Madam Speaker, I'm on a point of order. The member, you have the floor. You have the floor. I'm not representing you. You said clearly that they were threatened in public, and you said in his address, which was in public. So either you withdraw or you state where the threat was made.
Madam Speaker, in case the member is unclear, which I believe he is, and in case I was unclear, Madam Speaker, let me just state it for the public. The public servants were threatened that if they did not show up to work and took action to defend their entitlement. What is their right? That that their salaries would again be deducted. So, Madam Speaker, we interpret that as a threat. And so, Madam Speaker, this government governs with secrecy and deflects when questioned, Madam Speaker. Let us look at their record, Madam Speaker. They attempt to criminalize so-called false news.
Madam Speaker, the member is trying his best, and he falls very short of trying to castigate the government in this diatribe. The member knows very clearly that the public service and the workers are governed by rules of the public service regulations, general orders, and their collective bargaining agreements. The member is quite aware that middle management, supervisors, once they manage persons, they are responsible for people not only knowing where they stand in their employment, if they take days off or time off, but also that they are supposed to give persons the notice before any intent to disciplinary action. So the member, by putting that on the government, which I see is trying to do, by putting that on the government, that the government threatens somebody about their job, it's totally wrong, it's totally false. It's totally false. And for the member who has no credibility with labor in this country, who speaks out and finds new voice on the backs of the union because he can't generate his own people. This is poor. And we will not stand for him continuing to go down this road. Either he present the threat or he can withdraw, that's all. There was no threat from the government.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker, I said what I said and I stand by it. The attempt, Madam Speaker, to criminalize so-called false news was a direct attack on free expression and accountability. They still haven't come clean on the foreign contracts. Watch the silence now, Madam Speaker, for the talkative ones. They still haven't come clean on foreign contracts and multi-million-dollar deals signed behind closed doors, including, Madam Speaker, the Grand Lucayan sale, now months old, without proof of payment or full disclosure. They claim that 100, Madam Speaker, and 20 million was in the bank, have not been able to provide the evidence. But that member, Madam Speaker, who just talked, have not asked them to withdraw a false statement uttered in the public. Or, Madam Speaker, the secret $10 million loan to the Carmichael Village Project Development Company. $10 million, Madam Speaker. Yeah. They have not spoken to that. Mum's the word. Yeah. You cannot trust data protection without transparency, Madam Speaker. You cannot secure privacy in a system built on the PLP brand of secrecy. They won't even tell you, Madam Speaker, the interest rate on most of their public-private partnerships. It is that egregious, Madam Speaker. Think about that for a moment. That a country is taking out loans, because that's what it is, off-the-book loans, and they would not tell you what the interest rate is. The Free National Movement, Madam Speaker, has long called for stronger privacy laws tied directly to greater government openness. Under our leadership, Madam Speaker, we advance freedom of information implementation. They have failed to close the deal on it. We've modernized, Madam Speaker, cybersecurity frameworks, Madam Speaker, and called for ethical standards in digital asset regulation following FTX collapse, Madam Speaker. I hear them groaning. I know it's painful. Again, take the medicine. We have said repeatedly, Madam Speaker, that good governance means protecting both the people's data and the people's right to information. The two must rise together, Madam Speaker. That is why we are offering constructive amendments to this bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our member for East Grand Bahamas has a wonderful speaking engagement that he's leaving for in Golden Isles, and we wish him well and we send our regards, Madam Speaker. God bless you, my brother. God bless you. Go with God, my brother. Madam Speaker, shift enforcement. We are asking, Madam Speaker, that they shift enforcement towards penalties of meaningful fines and limited criminalization. Madam Speaker, we should create SMEs, Madam Speaker, small and medium enterprises, as safe harbors with phased compliance and training, Madam Speaker. We should adopt the necessity and proportionality test for all exemptions, Madam Speaker, and publish annual transparency reports on data breaches and exemptions. Madam Speaker, we should fully implement the Freedom of Information Act and link it to the Data Commissioner's mandate, Madam Speaker. Why are they afraid to fully enact it, to provide the funding necessary? Madam Speaker, we should build a data sovereign Bahamas, empower the regulator with independence, resources, and authority to issue binding guidance, Madam Speaker, under a future Pintard-led administration, Madam Speaker. We will pledge to advance, Madam Speaker, a comprehensive data sovereignty agenda built on 3 foundational pillars, Madam Speaker. 1, constitutional data rights. We will enshrine in law and ultimately, Madam Speaker, in our Constitution with the leave of our population, the right of every citizen to control the use of their personal data and digital, Madam Speaker, assets. Just as our forefathers and mothers fought to secure the right to vote, we must now secure the right to digital self-determination. Secondly, Madam Speaker, data protection and privacy excellence is what we'll pursue. We will move to make the Bahamas a premier jurisdiction for global data protection, a safe haven for individuals, institutions, and even foreign citizens seeking what we may call data citizenship, Madam Speaker. This concept, Madam Speaker, is both, we believe, visionary and practical, Madam Speaker, for those Bahamians that took the time, Madam Speaker, to share their ideas on the way forward. We are grateful. Just as financial clients, Madam Speaker, seek security for their assets, an individual seeks residence in stable nations. The world's citizens are now seeking jurisdictions that will protect their data with integrity, transparency, and constitutional guarantees. And they can rely on the data released by the government and not have to question whether or not it's motivated by political motives. Madam Speaker, we can offer that. Anchor in Bahamian law, regulated by Bahamian oversight, and sustained by Bahamian innovation, Madam Speaker. Too many brilliant Bahamian citizens' talents are not being utilized, and we must change that. Regardless of their political persuasion, Madam Speaker, we could move forward as a country if we embrace collective Bahamian excellence. Madam Speaker, the third thing is that data sovereignty and economic transformation is a must, and it is an urgent imperative. We will treat data as a strategic national asset, just like our marine resources and our tourism brand, marine resources. It pains me just to mention it, Madam Speaker. This administration has fallen down on protecting the marine resources and reserving it for Bahamians only. They have found loopholes, Madam Speaker, to facilitate others. Again, in our fishing industry, Madam Speaker, they failed to protect others when we were in, and now they have found other ways, Madam Speaker, we believe, to compromise our sovereignty with respect to our marine resources. Ask the fishermen across the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, we will require that critical national data sets in health, finance, education, and security be stored and mirrored under the Bahamian jurisdiction. And we will develop, Madam Speaker, a sovereign data infrastructure, data centers, cloud facilities, and secure digital embassies capable of hosting both Bahamian and international clients. Madam Speaker, in doing so, we will position the Bahamas as a digital hub of the Caribbean, where privacy, innovation, and prosperity come together. Madam Speaker, as I ask my colleague to, don't be so angry, Yamakro, just relax, man. We're family, we're family. Artificial intelligence, Madam Speaker, is rewriting the rules of value creation, Madam Speaker. You know, anger management is extremely important, Madam Speaker, and I commend it to my brother. I know several trained counselors. Every algorithm, Madam Speaker, depends on data. Every model, Madam Speaker, depends on access. And every digital service, Madam Speaker, depends on trust. Madam Speaker, countries that secure data rights and build digital infrastructure will attract the next generation of investment, not just in technology, but across all sectors. Fintech, climate tech, prop tech, med tech, ed tech, travel tech, tourism intelligence, sustainable resource management, and other applications of technology within traditional sectors. Madam Speaker, one of the things we intend to do is, Madam Speaker, we believe in a substantial way for the first time in the Bahamas, is to allocate, Madam Speaker, resources to research and development so that it can be identified as a solid line item in a Bahamian budget. Madam Speaker, there are countries, you can look at their growth trajectory and you could trace it, Madam Speaker, to the extent to which they spend time investing in talent and research and development so that they can have evidence-based decision, and that evidence often is generated within their own jurisdiction by their people and others who they attract to do research and development in their country, Madam Speaker. Israel remains the model, Madam Speaker, for us in terms of a country that have done a remarkable job in allocating, Madam Speaker, some 4% or thereabouts of their national budget to research and development, and it has paid dividends. It is time for us to move in that direction, Madam Speaker. And by embedding, Madam Speaker, data privacy, protection and sovereignty in our national development strategy, the Bahamas can lead this new economic frontier, exporting not just sand, sun and sea, Madam Speaker, but exporting talent, as we did with Devon Charlton, Madam Speaker, with Stevie Gardner, Madam Speaker, with Buddy Hield, with Jazz Chisholm. We are exporting, again, talent in so many different ways, earning not just attention, but even foreign revenue because of the gifts of our people in culture and sports, the very area that the Prime Minister says are not real jobs, Madam Speaker. We can export more than sand, sun and sea, but security, stability and digital trust. Madam Speaker, what are our policy commitments? Under my leadership, our team, Madam Speaker, would do the following. 1, modernize the data protection bill to incorporate biometric and data sovereignty, local data storage, and GDPR level enforcement, Madam Speaker. And I spoke about this earlier when I spoke about the general data protection regulations as exemplified, as demonstrated in the EU, Madam Speaker. 2, we would establish a national data trust to manage sovereign and public interest data assets transparently and responsibly, Madam Speaker. 3, we will create a Bahamian digital identity framework that safeguards citizens while enabling e-government and private sector innovation, Madam Speaker. 4, we will pursue international adequacy agreements with the European Union, CARICOM, and other partners to facilitate secure data transfers and digital trade. 5, we will invest in training and certification for data professionals, cybersecurity experts, and AI developers, ensuring our people are owners and beneficiaries of this transformation. Madam Speaker, 6, we will launch a global data citizenship program, inviting individuals and institutions around the world to register their data under the Bahamian protection and within our jurisdiction and regulatory oversight, Madam Speaker. We trust, Madam Speaker, Bahamian regulators, contrary to what some on that side seek to suggest, Madam Speaker. This is not simply, Madam Speaker, about technology. It is about sovereignty, security, and economic survival. It is about unleashing the Bahamian excellence, Madam Speaker, that we do not embrace because we are too tribalistic, that we don't embrace because we won't create opportunities to break these glass ceilings in this country so that our young people would be prepared to return home because they could see a pathway for their talents flourishing in this environment, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when our ancestors fought for national independence, they did so to ensure that the Bahamian people could govern their own affairs and safeguard their own future. Madam Speaker, in our time, the frontier for sovereignty has shifted, Madam Speaker. It is no longer just about land and sea, though extremely important. It is, Madam Speaker, increasingly about defense of data, identity, and autonomy. And Madam Speaker, if we do not govern our data, others will, Madam Speaker. If we do not value our digital identity, others will profit from it. And if we do not protect our people's information, we will have surrendered a piece of our sovereignty without even being aware, Madam Speaker. That is why this effort to elevate data protection and privacy and sovereignty, Madam Speaker, is not just a technical matter, Madam Speaker. It should be grounded, Madam Speaker, in a commitment by all of us, Madam Speaker. Some would say it is a moral imperative for a free and forward-thinking Bahamas. Madam Speaker, this bill should protect Bahamians, not punish them. This big government, PLP, Madam Speaker, they are really not about this business of unleashing Bahamian talent unless it comes through the portals that they set up, Madam Speaker. We should be about strengthening our economy, not slowing it down. It should be about building public trust, Madam Speaker. And unfortunately, we are headed in the wrong direction in this regard. This government wants credit for modernizing data protection. But a modern law cannot be built on outdated habits of secrecy, Madam Speaker. Let me just make sure it's clear. This government wants credit for modernizing data protection, but a modern law cannot be built on outdated habits of secrecy. And this government, Madam Speaker, is committed to secrecy, Madam Speaker. Bahamians deserve privacy with purpose and transparency with teeth. And they deserve a government that tells the truth in its words, in its budgets, and in its promises. Because if they cannot keep their word to the workers who serve the nation, evidenced by what is going on now, they will not keep their word to the people whose data they now seek to control. The Free National Movement, Madam Speaker, stands ready to fix this bill to protect both privacy and prosperity, and to restore trust where this government has broken it. The next great competition among nations will, yes, Madam Speaker, it will include competition over land. It will include competition over the marine environment. It will include labor and other capital. But, Madam Speaker, we believe that the next big competition is around the issue of trust. Can we trust those who govern this country if we are to put our precious, scarce resources in it, Madam Speaker? Trust in governance is what's needed in the Bahamas right now. Trust in technology with the right guardrails. Trust in how nations protect the dignity and digital lives of their citizens and others who cast their lot in our countries. And so, Madam Speaker, in closing, let the Bahamas become that trusted nation, a data sovereign state in the Caribbean where personal freedom meets digital responsibility and where innovation thrives under the rule of law, Madam Speaker. As leader of the opposition, as the incoming Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, I pledge that a government led by the Free National Movement will make this transformation a national priority, embedding data privacy, data protection, data sovereignty as a defining tenet of our development agenda. We will ensure, Madam Speaker, that the Bahamas not only participates in a new world being shaped by AI and data, but helps to lead it, helps to shape it, helps to ensure that its citizens prosper in it. And so with those few words, Madam Speaker, Marco City, the Free National Movement, we support this bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, let me just if you would indulge me just for a moment, Madam Speaker. I just want to tell a very quick story, and we join in celebrating Devon Charlton, Madam Speaker, a 100-meter, a 60-meter, again, hurdle champion, Madam Speaker, a graduate, Madam Speaker, from the Red Machine and Purdue University, Madam Speaker. And she represents the best, as Father Willie Thompson used to say, of what this nation has produced, Madam Speaker. And she demonstrated it, Madam Speaker, in the 2015-2017 World Athletics Championship, Madam Speaker, and of course the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Again, she won a silver medal in the events in the 2022 Commonwealth Games, Madam Speaker. And of course, She set a world record, Madam, a national record and a world record, Madam Speaker. She represents the best of what we produce. And Madam Speaker, I close just by telling a story about a young lady who summons me. And I came out of Parliament, she called me, and I went over, because after all, Madam Speaker, the person's behind the barricades, you know, that's our employers. You know, and so I went over to talk to one of the persons who employ all of us in here. And she told a harrowing story about having an autistic child, Madam Speaker, but lack of facilities to give that child a fighting chance. And the fact that there are tests that are required to determine the state of the child that requires resources that she and other families don't have. And how she got on the job that she's on now, Madam Speaker, after coming through a tough period, including coming out of a shelter. And that even when she complete courses as she did, she couldn't be sure it could make a difference in the public service based on how we are presently structured. And Madam Speaker, she lamented the cost of rent and how high it is, and the state of apartments that you sometimes have access to. And the fact that the dates for surgeries often change so often that, and you're concerned that your loved one continues to get worse. I'll stop there, Madam Speaker, only to say that as I listen to her grievances, her complaints, her pain, it really represents many persons that every member in Parliament, every member of Parliament in here have had those stories told to them. So it's a systemic problem that we have an obligation to fix, Madam Speaker. And so I don't begrudge Bahamians or get angry with them when sometimes they cuss us and they express their frustration. Madam Speaker, things are rough on this road. And we should be humble enough and patient enough to hear the concerns of Bahamians and then with immediacy respond to try and help solve. We can't solve every single thing, but you could solve some things on their list as individual members of Parliament, and then in government you could solve and fix the system to make it better for our people. That's my commitment, that's our commitment, and by the grace of God we will deliver. Thank you, Madam Speaker.